This is a short impromptu video about libation. Um, because the whole purpose is people need to understand Omenana, and in understanding that, libation is part of it. So first, let me read a scripture here. It's Genesis chapter chapter 28, and I'll start reading here at verse 18. It says, "Early the next morning, Jacob took the stone he had placed under his head and set it up as a pillar and poured oil on top of it. He called the place Bethel, though the city used to be called Luz. Then Jacob made a vow, saying, 'If God will be with me and will watch over me on this journey I am taking, and will give me food to eat and clothes to wear, so that I return safely to my father's household, then the Lord will be my God, and this stone that I have set up as a pillar will be God's house. And of all that you give me, I will give you a tenth.'" So we can see here that what Jacob is doing here, he's praying. And in his time of prayer, he pours libation on the place he set up as a place of prayer, the place where he is meeting with Chukwu. So we see here that libation is part of prayer. Now we see that he set up an actual place to actually pray. It's not just something random. He has a designated altar. He has a designated place where he prayed, where he would say where he's praying. And he designated the place by setting up an altar there. It says pillar, but the whole pillar is an altar. So the reason why it's important, because every household ought to have an altar, ought to have a place that is set up for prayer. Every household should. Even the extended family, the community, there ought to be a place for community prayer. And when there are gatherings for the whole house in prayer, when there's gatherings for the community in prayer, there should be a libation. This is part of prayer. Now, I know that if someone has gotten caught up in Christianity or whatever, this is not something that people that are part of Christianity are doing anymore. But we can see that this is something that the patriarchs, the Igbo, Israelite, Hebrew patriarchs did. The Hebrew patriarchs did. I also want to read, it is Genesis chapter 35, and I want to start reading at verse 14. "And Jacob set up a stone pillar at the place where God had talked with him, and he poured out a drink offering on it. He also poured oil on it, and Jacob called the place where God had talked with him Bethel." So we can see here that when there's a designated place of prayer, libation is poured. And if there's going to be a return, if there's going to be a return to Omenana, we have to get back to the basics. Have to get back to doing things the way they've always been done. Have to get back to pouring libations. Not just praying, not just whatever. We've got to get back to doing things the proper way. And the proper way is there needs to be an altar set up. There needs to be libation poured. And there needs to be altars set up in every home. There needs to be altars for those that are meeting in a community sense. There needs to be a community altar set up. Libations need to be poured. So this is just about returning to the practice of libations. Now, this is not exclusive to Igbos or Israelites. This is something that was also practiced by other nations, but in a different form. So libations aren't something that's in a vacuum, but so other nations practice the same thing. But when you talk about pouring out a libation to Chukwu, there is your difference. There is what sets Igbos apart from other nations. So let's return, let's get back to doing things the way they've always been done in ancient history. And if you're confused still or you don't understand, as I will continue to say, ask your grandfather. Ask your grandfather what your great grandfather taught him. We got to get back to the ancient practices.